We have had shoppers, yesterday and today still coming in saying, "Oh, we forgot Easter," which apparently happens. So,
People forget Easter,
apparently, yeah.
and they come in the day after Easter.
Yep, to buy gifts,
and it's all pretty much gone.
Yep, we've sold nearly all out of stock, which is fantastic. So we've hit the targets that we were aiming for.
So it's a rare thing when there's more bilbies in the wild than a chocolate shop.
Wave on waves since the gun of bedroom. Adelaide, Adelaide, hoo. Landed here and made it there, hoo. Adelaide, Adelaide, hoo. 10 bombs to the refugees. Adelaide, Adelaide, hoo. Brings it dead and soon to knees. Adelaide, Adelaide, hoo. Oh, little Adelaide, oh, Adelaide, hoo. Oh, little Adelaide, hoo.
Hello and welcome to the Adelaide Show, the weekly podcast that puts South Australian passion on centre stage. I'm Steve Davis, and joining me in Stirling at Red Cacao, I have Nigel Dobson-Keefe.
Hello, and hello to all of our listeners.
And the chocolatier himself, Marcus Booth-Remmers.
Hello, how are you going?
Good. Now, can I just double-check, have I pronounced your surname correctly?
Yes. Yep,
it's exactly as it sounds.
Correct.
I was expecting, being a chocolatier, there'd be a different pronunciation, like a Booth-Remmers or something.
No, unfortunately, just classic.
Just classic, that's as it is. Also coming up on the show tonight, Nigel, in Is It News, what are you grilling us on? What topic?
Chocolate stories from Adelaide.
The South Australian drink of the week is going to be your wicked hot chocolate, Marcus.
Correct.
In 100 weeks ago, we're going to hear a little bit from one half of Clarke and Dawe, Bryan Dawe. He joined us 100 weeks ago, talked about growing up in Port Adelaide, and of course, John Clarke passed away last week, so there's a little bit that ties that all together. And in the musical pilgrimage, Ben Ford-Davies has a song that will wrap up our whole topic for the night. All that and a whole lot more coming up in this week's episode of The Adelaide Show.
Adelaide, 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 ooh, Adelaide, 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 ooh.
Yes, hi everyone. Welcome to episode 191 of The Adelaide Show. Marcus, we've got lots of questions to throw your way about chocolate. We're dipping this week's episode in chocolate.
Fantastic.
I don't think we'd have too many objections to that. Got to ask a quick question, though. In the introduction, you mentioned about Easter being a big Easter. At the beginning, do you just make a stockpile and then hope it sells? Is that basically it?
Yeah, I mean, we're still a very young business, of course, so the first years we didn't know what was coming for us, and it took us completely by surprise, Easter. So we were up, midnight, 2 a.m, moulding, making more bilbies and packaging each night and think, oh, we've got enough now. By 10 a.m, we'd sold out again the next day. And we're like, wow, this is crazy. So, we've recorded that information over the years and now, yes, we produce, a larger quantity to begin with. And then it's a matter of selling that quantity. Easter comes really busy all in 1 week, basically.
Right. Mm. What happens if you over-cater? What do you do with those bilbies?
Look, it's a difficult thing. We'll give them away, essentially, as a charity or for good customers or things like that. Staff members, of course. But essentially, yeah, that's the trick, is to try really not to
Yes.
overcater.
So you have chocolate for breakfast, lunch and dinner.
Yes.
A few weeks in a row.
Yeah.
So good.
Yep.
So I remember back in the day when I was in radio, in fact, it might have been my 5DN days, I interviewed someone from Cadbury, and I'm sure he said they just make heaps all the time, and they keep them in storage, and they've got about a 5-year shelf life.
Yeah, I mean, this is the truth. There will be companies that do that. We also, as well, we like to keep it very late with the production, like to keep that chocolate as fresh as possible. For us, that's still something that's important. And yeah, I do know companies that will make it 6 months out, a year out sort of thing,
Wow.
which is just not our style. We're 1 month prior, start that production and get it going, which does mean our stock hits the shelves late. But that's what it's about. And we have some customers coming through saying, where's the Easter stock? Where's your dark chocolate? But we release it 2 weeks before Easter. It's as fresh as possible. It's going to be consumed in the best quality.
So, because I'm a big coffee man, and I know that coffee does not like light
Yep.
or air
Yep.
or moisture, really.
Yep.
Is chocolate like that?
Very much the same, yeah. It definitely doesn't like light. You've got to keep it definitely in a cool, dry space, and it's essentially away from light. So, especially you've got packed bilbies and things like that, light exposure will deteriorate the product. So we definitely don't want to keep any stock. Definitely not. So it's clear out that stock once Easter's done.
Right. Wow. Okay. Let's get down to business then.
Yeah.
Our first order of business every episode is to toast our late patron, Queen Adelaide. We've got some big mugs in front of us. We'll try toasting with the mugs, I think. To the Queen.
To the Queen.
Yep.
Some got a clunk. Oh, yeah, that worked.
Beautiful. That works. And indeed, we are drinking this week as the South Australian Drink of the Week. They're really becoming a cult favourite among chocoholics in SA, is these hot chocolates that you make here.
Yep.
And when we were coming here, I suggested we do this because I find hot chocolate so disappointing in so many places. It's gutless. It's watery. It's ridiculous. And I had one here, was it now, about 5 months ago?
Could be, yeah.
And it blew me away. It wasn't overly sweet. It was beautiful mouthfeel. And so I thought we should do this tonight. But I'm sitting here. It's on this lovely little wooden serving platter. There's a little chip of chocolate next to it. And Nigel's right. Etiquette. Do we dive? Why do you give us this spoon? Why have we got a spoon with this?
Well, the spoon is there. You know, a lot of people like to enjoy their hot chocolates in many different ways. It is true. Some people like to scoop that froth off the top and just enjoy that to start with, and then get into the main body of the drink. I personally like to use that spoon towards the end of the drink. So often our hot chocolates will end up with a bit of a clump, a bit of, almost half melted chocolate down the bottom of the cup as it sinks down there.
Yep.
And that's the good bit to get down and sort of scoop that out.
Yes, because I'm a big believer in delayed gratification.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking I won't eat the topping with the spoon, or do you think I'm missing out?
I think you've got to eat half the top.
Okay, eat half the topping with the spoon.
Yep.
All right.
And then sort of get into the next bit.
Yes.
But don't stir the bottom. You want to keep that bit. It's like the last little piece of just rich, solid
so it's
chocolate.
like the ice cream cones with the waffle cones
Yeah,
with the
correct.
chocolate
Exactly,
down
the
the very
chocolate at the
bottom.
bottom.
So the very best bit is the bit of chocolate down the very bottom.
Or when you have ice cream with topping or something, and just that last bit is where, or on fruit or something, and you've eaten all the fruit, and there's this bit of ice cream and syrup, then you're beautiful. Yeah. Anyway, so this is the South Australian Drink of the Week. I'm going to have half the topping. Now, I got the dark chocolate, the hot dark chocolate off the menu. Tell me, what am I about to be imbibing?
Yeah, definitely. It's this is one of our most popular drinks here. We mix a really rich dark chocolate through our BD Farm biodynamic milk as well. So it's a very full-bodied, creamy milk that adds a lot of body and texture to the actual hot chocolate. Melted through gives that real rich flavour as well.
And what I found is there was a light sprinkle on the tongue, like a summer shower of chocolateness that came and went pretty quickly. But then, and I've only had half the top at this point, it's when I exhale, but I leave my mouth closed and a little bit of air circulates inside my mouth. It's like chocolate is coming up from subterranean vents in my body. Yeah. And it's beautiful.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's probably the best way of describing it, to be honest. It's that top area there on these hot chocolates. We've capped it with a little bit of powdered chocolate as well. That's that initial hit that you're getting, and then that rich depth is coming from the drink itself. And we're using quite a dark chocolate for this, and that's why that air will allow that to come right through the palate, and that's what you're experiencing there.
Oh. Now, Nigel, so Marcus, you and I went with the dark chocolate.
Yep.
You went with the Aztec. What's the Aztec?
It's spiced. So we've gone back to the roots of how chocolate was enjoyed in its original form. So
some of the traditional, Steve.
Yeah.
Excuse me. What did the chocolatier and I both have? Yeah. Thank you.
The chocolate from the roots of chocolate?
This one's got a bit of chili, straight chili in it, and some cinnamon as well. Spiced.
What do you mean by straight chili?
Well, it's like the powdered, like full-bodied chili. So you will get some spiciness out of this one. We can always make it spicier as well. But essentially, chocolate was enjoyed with spices to begin with. There was no sugar added. There was nothing else. It was quite a hearty, intense drink. And so we've tried to sort of replicate that, with this drink. It's been on our menu from day one and is a consistent crowd favourite.
So while you were talking, I did drift off, because I did take another couple of sips of my dark chocolate. And what I discovered next was, now that I'm into the milk, the base.
Yeah.
It was like going to the surf on a really warm summer's day and the ocean is warm and there's these thick waves of milky chocolate that just cascade across the tongue. They splash, and nothing is thin. It's just, you definitely can taste the milkiness, but there's chocolate spraying around in the air all at the same time.
Yeah, it's like you said, like silky waves essentially. Like it's filling the whole mouth.
Yes, a silky wave.
Yeah.
That's exactly what. It's almost like you don't get wet.
Yep.
It balls on you, and you just, as you glide through this.
Yep.
Fantastic. What are you getting? There was cinnamon and chili. And all sorts.
Yeah, it's not too much chili though, because you can still taste the chocolate underneath.
Right.
So the chocolate flavour's still there well and truly. And there's basically a hint of cinnamon and a hint of chili.
And I've got no sugar in this, have I? And I don't want Freddie. It's just got that lovely.
The sweetness is coming from that milk as well.
Right.
So that's where you're getting that base from. But now it balances out that chocolate as well, because you wouldn't want it to be, too much more intense than that. But it's just literally just that sweetness coming from the milk mixed with that chocolate.
And it's holding its heat well.
Yep.
I'm guessing that's the cup.
It's the mug. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you would always recommend ordering the mug, wouldn't you?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing that throws me in situations like this is we've got a little piece of your chocolate on the side. Looks like dark chocolate with raspberry or strawberry.
Yep, correct. Yep.
Would that ruin my experience to have, what's the...
We say it's a little taste teaser as such. It's something, just there to, balance or, complement the drink. So you can enjoy this whenever you want, sort of thing. So, you're having a lot of liquids, a lot of smoothness and silkiness, and then this will add a bit of crisp, another texture. So
it's about 2 centimeters by 1 centimeter, chip there, and it's about 4 or 5 mils deep. So it's not a huge piece. Do I just put that in my mouth at once, or do you bite it in half?
I would bite that size in half, but you
would you? Okay.
You can go the whole
you just saw into my soul, didn't you? All right, I'm going to do that right now.
Yeah. And then it's just about now having another texture, like trying something else, refreshing the palate a little bit, and then going back to the drink again. Some people do pop that whole piece of chocolate into their hot chocolate and melt it through.
Right.
There's no rules.
There's no rules?
No.
Really? You're saying that to me now?
Yeah.
All right, so I've had that. I've got a little tang of raspberry.
Yep.
On the palate. The chocolate's now melted. I chewed it a bit. I couldn't let it. Should I have just let it melt?
You can actually, like the first bit, bite and chew the first bit, but then allow it to melt from then onwards. Then you're going to get the full flavour. So it's going to go right through your palate.
This is a chocolate consumption masterclass tonight. I have one more sip before we move on, just to see how this is interplaying.
There
we go. Wow. Now that's interesting. I actually do feel like there are people on raspberry surfboards riding the crest of this wave now.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great thing to do, and it just gives you another dimension to the actual experience. So what we want here is not that you come in here just for a hot chocolate. This is about an experience, and that's why it's served on these boards. That's why it's served with the chocolate on the side. We do chocolate and coffee matching also, because it's the idea is that you're going to have an experience, take a journey, essentially.
Yep.
So you're going to see different layers within this drink, and hopefully discover something new.
Yep, well, I already have. All that's left for me to do after this is to get out of my wetsuit, dust down the chocolate sand, and get ready for the rest of my day or night. What did you think, Nigel?
Very good.
Ah.
I do like my chili chocolates.
Yes, this is actually the quietest Nigel's been for a long time, so I think we've just found his comforter. All that's left for me to say is any of the range of the hot chocolates at Red Cacao. This week, the South Australian drinks of the week. two quick stories without notice this week. The first one is just a reminder that our listener survey is underway. We'd love to learn more about you so that we can help tailor the sort of people we get on our program, because we don't know if Marcus is going to be popular yet or not, although I've got a sneaking suspicion that you will be. I think you've got your ways into the hearts and minds of women and men throughout Adelaide.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, very subtly getting out of that. You're not concurring. You're just saying thank you.
I don't know what to say. Yeah.
It's the height of discretion, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what a chocolatier needs. So it's at theadelaideShow.com.au/survey. If you could do that, it'll be up for the next few weeks. We'd love to do that. And if any questions that you don't want to answer, because it wasn't actually written by us, it was written by a firm that does this for podcasts, just ignore them, just skip them and get the thing done. The other thing is, last week, spontaneously, we had a poetry slam challenge that came out of nowhere. And we shared those poems through the last week. Nigel did one on technology. Amelia did one on cake. And I did one on pets. These were topics that were given to us just before we had to make up the poem.
Literally with 1 second notice.
Yes. Marcus is secretly thinking, I'm glad I wasn't on that week. And we had the voting on the weekend for people to vote which one was best.
Oh, really?
Would you like the results?
How many people voted?
Hmm?
How many people voted?
I don't think that counts. No, we could only, unfortunately
your
with this.
Your mum?
No, we had a cap of 40 votes. That was as much as we were allowed to take with this.
Oh, okay.
Because we're using the free
version.
The free version.
Yep.
So here's the answer. You ready? The first set of questions was for the crowd to decide which of those topics they think was the most difficult to have to do improvised poetry.
Okay, that's a good one. Yeah.
And the winner was Nigel's topic of technology, which possibly explains why the best poem, according to people, was actually a tie between myself and Amelia. And I think it's totally self-explanatory. Do you want to do more poetry slams this week, Nigel?
No, not particularly. I think that's my lifetime of poetry slams done.
All right, well, there you go. Thanks, everyone, for voting. Thanks for enjoying them. They're still up on the Facebook page. And thanks to Amelia, too, for having a bit of fun with them.
How close were the votes on the numbers?
They were
Was I
identical.
destroyed? No, I know.
Oh, well, there was daylight. There was daylight. But it was hard. Technology was hard. And then the crowd was fair about that, too.
I'm surprised you kept up with Amelia because she was pretty awesome with the chocolate one.
Okay, let's stop talking now.
Hi, this is Neil Ward from Neil Ward Publicity, and I've seen a lot of shows, but you're listening to a very different kind of show tonight.
Marcus Booth-Remmers has long had chocolate in his system, forging his career as a patisserie chef in some of South Australia's top restaurants before pursuing cacao across Europe for 5 years. Thankfully, though, he returned and he set up Red Cacao in Stirling, where he and Evie have crafted a chocolate kitchen, a cafe, and an award-winning dessert venue in the Adelaide Hills. He is also, can I say this, the target of many, many crushes. And one of our most fervent supporters, Janice, is one of his biggest fans. Marcus, welcome to the formal part of the podcast.
Not a problem. Yeah.
I'll try and play down the fact that there are people out there who just sigh when you walk past.
Yep.
All right. You're happy for me not to bring that up again, aren't you?
Not a problem. I'm aware it is happening.
So did they used to happen when you were a pastry chef as well?
To a degree, but not quite as much. It's definitely the top
So there's
part.
a sort of a pecking order of
Yep.
cooking
There is,
specialities.
and I feel like chocolate's on top.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you mean. So I took that the wrong way. So why does chocolate whip up a frenzy, do you think? What is it?
It's a bit of a mystery, honestly, to me. But it is definitely there, especially among the females. It's something I think that they just love, enjoy. It's got something in it that, makes them go crazy. So that's just a word. Anything associated with it, it's gold.
There were, as I was preparing for this night with you, I was remembering, that sounded a bit saucy. Two movies in particular of which chocolate was the main theme. One was Chocolat,
Yep.
which was Juliette Binoche and Johnny Depp, in which she travels the country following the wind, and she uses chocolate to warm people's hearts and bring them together. The other one is Like Water for Chocolate, which is, I believe it was a Mexican movie. It was a story about a young girl who wasn't allowed to marry her love. Her older sister had to marry first. And I think it was the mum or the grandma used a special spell of putting rose petals in with the chocolate to make people fall in love or whatever. It's this magical spirit that goes with chocolate. What is it movies like this that perpetuate that spirit, or has it been there? Or as you travelled around Europe, is intoxicated with magic and spirituality and all these mystical things?
Yeah, look, I think that it's there naturally, and I think that the movies follow that. The movies definitely add to it, and there are plenty of them out there. And yes, there's a lot of them around that where it's mystery, it's mythical, it's something special, it's something magical. And there's, even there's children's movies around chocolate, of course, as well. But yeah, it's got this aura, essentially, chocolate, of being something greater or than the usual. But that's all the way back into history as well. Like I was talking about the Aztec, the Mayan cultures, they held cacao or chocolate in a very high esteemed realm. So it's had that throughout its history, and it's continuing within today as well. Yeah.
What's cacao versus chocolate? Can you explain that for people?
Yeah, definitely. It's an interesting one, and of course we get asked this a lot due to our name.
Have you got yourself recorded answering this?
No, I don't. Exactly.
Oh, you might soon. You could play this snippet back.
Yeah, it's probably not a bad thing to do. It's an interesting one because cacao is essentially chocolate in its raw form. So when you've got a cacao tree, it grows cacao pods, and inside it are cacao seeds. And from the seeds, we make chocolate. But it's the process of making chocolate that turns it from cacao through, in the English language, to cocoa to chocolate. So we get cocoa mass in between that as well. But essentially, it's going back to the roots. It's going back to what is chocolate, and that's cacao. And that's why we wanted to say that in our name as well, that we respect that line as well, back to its growth and back to it being a fruit and a tree.
So we hear that, chocolate comes from these cacao pods. So how big are they? Are they small, like coffee beans, or bigger? Or
no, they're big. It'll be almost, the best way is probably like a capsicum sort of size. Okay. So they're fairly decent size.
And do they have like what's the consistency like inside?
It's all gooey. It's such like it's like a pulp essentially inside.
Okay. And so it's like a pulp with a skin.
Correct. Yeah, it's quite a thick skin.
Okay.
I guess similar to a papaya.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. And you cut into that, and you're going to get this pulpy mass of whiteness with these little seeds through it. And those seeds are about the size of like an almond or so.
Oh,
and
so
they'll be about
big
20,
seeds.
Big seeds, exactly. Big seeds. And that's the actual seed that we use.
Oh.
There'll be about between 20 to 40 within a pod.
Okay.
And that's what we actually extract out.
So those seeds will get like taken out and then dried and crushed or something?
Yep, correct. So they get fermented actually first. That develops flavour. And that's something I think a lot of people miss or skip or don't understand. There's a fermentation stage within the chocolate making process. And again, that can be very varied depending on the temperatures, where it's done, which country it's done in. And then it gets dried and shipped off from there.
So when it's shipped, is it shipped as the whole bean still?
Whole bean, yep.
So fermentation, they just put it in some sort of liquid and let...
No, it's actually normally done in like either out in the open with tarpaulins or cloth or mesh or something over the top, so it'll get essentially hot underneath it, so it starts to literally ferment and develop its flavours. Or it can be done in big crates, so wooden crates as well, which sometimes will get tossed and turned as well, just to help give it a bit of air.
So it ferments within the seed itself, sort of thing?
Yeah, correct. Within that pulp around it.
So it's just the whole pod, so it ferments in the pod.
Correct. Well, you take the actual pod away.
Yes.
And you will end up with that pulp, gooey, the gooey pulp with those seeds around it.
Yep.
And in that fermentation stage, that gooey pulp will start to basically ferment and develop the flavour in the seed.
Okay.
And then that pulp's removed.
What do they do with the pulp?
That often, normally...
Is it alcoholic?
It can be, exactly. You can make cacao liqueur from that pulp, but often it's just discarded, unfortunately.
Right, okay. Oh, interesting, isn't it? This is fascinating to learn about the origin. So you get down to those little seeds then, and they are then dried, roasted...
Correct.
Crushed.
Yep. And then processed. And from that process stage, it's then going into what is starting to turn towards chocolate. The sort of the idea, what we know of chocolate, goes through conching, which is an important step, which is basically making it really fine and really smooth And that's when a lot of the acidity comes away as well, because the cocoa beans can be quite acidic as well.
So this conching, the more you do it, the finer the chocolate, and
Correct.
there'd be cheaper chocolate out there that's not conched very much.
Correct, yeah, conched less. Yep.
Oh,
Yep. So,
right.
yeah, it's about a 72-hour process. So you're going over a few
To
days.
do it properly.
To do it properly, yeah. But of course, that's expensive to do. So there will be some companies will reduce that time.
And one last thing before we leave the plantation altogether. You could take from the same plantation, same trees, the same pods, take the skin off, but ferment them differently.
Yep.
And
Definitely.
you would have vastly different flavors of chocolate.
Yeah, I would say, I wouldn't maybe say vastly, but you would definitely have different flavors in the chocolate. And that's what's really fascinating about chocolate is what we knew as chocolate 20 years ago was just your dairy milk bar. And that was a sweet, sugary treat. Whereas now we're getting into chocolate being a connoisseur's range where you can say, yeah, what does this bean taste like from this plantation growing in this season? And that's getting really interesting and really in depth.
So, do they actually taste the bean, the hard bean, or the bean at any point to get an idea of the flavour?
Yep. So it's at that dried point after it's been gone through that fermentation and dried. At that point where we're assessing the quality of the bean,
right,
or the value, how good this cacao is.
Yeah.
That's when it will be tasted or checked or smelt or looked at as well to determine its price, essentially.
And so those beans, they're brown at that stage if you break
Yeah.
them open?
Yeah, they're going brown, or even inside can even be a bit more black as well. So they actually turn quite dark.
Oh, okay.
I've got to pause. And I have to pause because the South Australian drink of the week I've been having, the hot chocolate, I'm down to the last quarter. Is that when I dip my spoon in and stir it, or am I jumping the gun?
Dip your spoon in and see what's right at the bottom.
Okay.
If there is something down there, you'll be lucky.
No, just really brown milk.
Then that's just got to drink it then.
Just drink it. So sometimes a bit of I did actually suck up a lot of it from the top, so that would normally have
Would sink down eventually.
sink down.
Yeah.
So
Drank
I
too
am
fast. Yep.
the man who was talking about delayed gratification. I've already had it.
Yeah, exactly.
I've already spent that beautiful load of sweetness. So I'll sip that as we go through. I'll keep you going though with some other questions because I have to say I've had the pleasure of working with you behind the scenes and in getting the website sorted out and whatnot. And one thing that struck me is how fastidious you are. The attention to detail is absolutely phenomenal. Even today, when you brought out the hot chocolates for us, you spotted a little bit of cocoa dust that was out of place, and so off you went, grabbed your little towel and wiped it. I've got to ask, is that fastidious nature what made you well positioned to move into chocolate? Or does chocolate change you and demand you take on these characteristics?
I think it's the first option.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's part of my nature, but it lends itself very well to chocolate making. I think if you didn't have that, you just couldn't put up with chocolate. Chocolate's very temperamental. It likes to be very difficult to work with and changes and is awkward. So unless you're very particular about the finer details, it can be a nightmare to work with. So I think it lends itself and marries up really nicely.
So you're making your little truffles and whatnot here, ganaches.
Yep.
And your customers hoping that the ones they bought 2 months ago will taste like the ones they're buying today.
Yep.
Does that mean you've actually got a hell of a battle out there every time you make them to corral the chocolate into the right
Correct.
zone?
Yep. In chocolates are one of those products you've got to be very patient and you've got to treat it as if it's got its own life, essentially. Like you've got to be really caring to it, make sure its temperature's right, make sure its consistency is right, be watching it and nurturing it, essentially. You can't rush it, you can't, harass it or move it too quickly. It's really about being gentle and in tune with it. It's quite intuitive as well, chocolate making.
And what degrees of difference? Are we talking about a degree difference in your bowl and the chocolate's different?
Yeah, it's half a degree. It can be, it can be down to your half or a couple of, quarter of a degree difference will make your chocolate work or not work.
And that's all of them? White, dark, milk?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, some of them are a little bit more lenient. They'll give you a little bit more play. But essentially, if you want it to be spot on, you've got to be within those ranges.
Can you rescue a batch that's heading the wrong way, or
if you pick it up quickly enough? Yep. And that's, I guess, where you have to be there with it all the time, standing by it. Chocolate making is a funny process because from the outside it might look like not much is happening because, there would be one person standing over a batch of chocolate just being there with it, and they're wondering, well, what's going on? But you're actually there looking after it, tendering it into the right consistency and the right temperature.
You're like these people who talk to plants, aren't you?
Yeah, a little bit. I do talk to it sometimes, yeah.
But, so you're watching it the whole time. Let's say you do miss it. Yeah. And what happens to it if it's not quite right?
Essentially it'll split. That's the most common defect we'll have, and that's where the fat will split from the powder, so the solids, and that's when you get those markings in a bar. You'll see like strips of white or little streaks through it or little spotted things over it. It'll also be chocolate that's been exposed to heat or sunlight will also show those same signs. It's basically the butter, the cocoa butter, and the cocoa mass, the powder splitting from each other. So that's where that temperature is so important, that it stays emulsified throughout its process. So
what do you really have to throw it out, or is there a different way you could make use of it?
No, you have to be, chocolate's a very expensive product, so you really don't want to be throwing it away if you can. If you catch it quickly enough, chocolate has got that beautiful ability to be remelted, so you can always rework chocolate again. You can always start again if you need to. Process takes you another, good chunk of time, so you don't want
how long
either. It's a few hours, like you're going to be looking at 3 to 4 or 5 hours maybe to get it back to that same stage again. So
seriously?
Yeah, and that's if you're dipping your ganaches or something like that. So you don't want to do that. You can throw away a whole day's worth of work if you let it get out of temper.
You've been here for 4 years or thereabouts.
Yep.
Have you ever had to throw away a day's work?
Yes, yeah, definitely. Yep. And it's got worse and worse as we've got busier. It's difficult to keep everything going, and your temperatures in your kitchen fluctuate so much, and your body heat or just other operations that are happening around it is very difficult.
Body heat.
Yeah. If the cafe gets full, it'll affect the chocolate in the kitchen.
Is this why when I ring you during office hours, you're very short on the phone?
Sometimes. I might be within a degree of getting the chocolate right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we need to have a sign up the front of be very tender and gentle with the chocolatier.
Yeah. Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. It's during those days that we're doing the chocolate making that I'll be, and then literally like the weeks leading up to Easter, I have not answered the phone for, those 3 weeks. And emails, nothing. Like I've been off the grid for that period because you are just concentrating on that chocolate making, and that's your main focus.
You mentioned earlier cocoa butter. So basically the chocolate is a mix of cocoa butter and the cocoa
powder.
So what's cocoa butter come from?
It's the natural, so within the bean, so that almond shaped bean.
Yep.
Once it's pressed, you'll press out the fat, which is the butter. And what's left after the pressing is the powder.
Okay.
It's almost 50% butter and 50% powder, but the butter's got a higher value on it. So financially, it gets used for cosmetics and makeups and things like that as well, because it's quite therapeutic.
Okay, so that's basically like an oil of the cacao.
Correct. Yeah, and you'll see it in a lot of products. They'll have cocoa butter listed within it because it's really.
And so once you get it separated, then it's the knack of putting it back together again.
Correct.
In the same or slightly different ratio to
Correct. Yeah, and that's when you go through that whole process of then if you're making milk chocolate, you're adding in milk powders, and sugar gets added in then as well, vanilla to add in some more flavour as well. That's the process then of creating the edible chocolate essentially. But the butter having such a high price tag on it, gets substituted out. And that's where the whole thing around, your palm oils or your vegetable oils will come in because they are taking cocoa butter out.
Yes.
So only high quality couverture chocolate will be pure cocoa butter.
So is the cocoa butter, is that the reason why your real chocolates tend to melt?
Yes.
And And so one of the downsides is because the actual proper cocoa butter melts is you can substitute in another oil or fat with a higher melting point, so you don't end up with your cheap chocolate bar melting in your fingers sort of thing.
Correct. And that's also, though, that
Okay.
when you have it when you eat it,
Yep.
it'll melt in a different way. The consistency will be different. So if you're looking at premium couverture, it'll melt smoothly and cleanly and leave a clean finish off your tongue. Whereas if it's got a substitute in there, it'll get really cluggy and sort of cling because it's basically fat. You're eating fat then.
I'm not following. I think we might need to put some in our mouth to double check what Marcus means actually to fully understand this. But are you saying if you look at the ingredients list on chocolate,
Yep.
and you see anything about oil,
Yep. You should, probably not take it.
you probably shouldn't eat it because they've substituted
Correct. Yeah.
butter.
Yeah.
They've made money off that.
Yeah.
And then they're just shoveling in whatever they can find.
Correct. Yeah. And I mean, but if you go to your average supermarket, nearly every bar that you're going to pick up, anything from there will have another kind of fat in it.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating thing because we get asked often for dairy-free products as well, and everyone looks at the bar and says, well, it's got butter.
Yeah.
Well, it's cocoa butter. That's the natural fat that's in your chocolate. So
I thought you got cocoa butter from milking cacaos.
yeah.
No?
Boom.
All right.
So that cocoa butter, is that like a consistency of like the coconut oil where that goes out sort of white, hardish, but melts pretty easily at low temperature sort of thing?
Yeah, it's actually, it does form into solid, little pellets as well, little pieces.
Okay.
Cause that's what gives the chocolate its snap.
Yep.
And its consistency. So it'll give it that nice shine as well.
Yep.
When melted, it's quite clear. It's quite smooth.
Okay.
And it has almost no flavour. It's quite odorless as well. All of that flavour in the body comes from the powder from the other component in your bean. And that's where you get that real depth of flavour. So that's why white chocolate, doesn't taste like much.
So it's
just
just
sweet. Yeah, it's just,
So what's the white chocolate come from?
it'll be the cocoa butter. So only half of the bean. That's why purists will say white chocolate's not really chocolate because you're not actually using the whole cocoa bean. You're just using a portion of it.
Using the
You're
oils out of it.
Using
Yeah.
the oils, exactly,
Yeah.
just the fat. And so, yes, white chocolate's not that healthy for you because it's just fat and sugar and dairy.
Well, that's two of the major food groups. That sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
In talking with our musical curator, Dan Drummond, ready for getting the song for tonight, he's actually picked one up called I'm a Boy because he thought chocolate, Easter, it's all about kids and having fun, and memories of chocolate is just this fun thing to have. But of course, we're talking at chocolatier level here, and where we're really fastidious about things. And so I want to put it to you, how do we get the balance right? And is there a danger that we don't in being too serious about chocolate and forgetting the fun aspect?
Yeah.
Or have I just offended you by that question?
No, not at all. I mean, I think it's definitely a valid question as well, valid point, because it is true. And I think if you look within what we do here at Red Cacao, it is, very particular about making the process right. We're particular about every aspect of what we do, down to the service, down to, how the water glass comes onto the table and the bottle, how full the bottle is. There's a point that everyone's taught to fill a water bottle to, like where to place the spoon on the board. Like there are those little details that we go to that level. But then over Easter right now, we've given away giant Easter eggs to a young boy who found a little token in our Easter egg hunt out the front there. We've had this massive, all along the lawn here at the front.
Yes.
We've done this really big Easter egg hunt on Easter Saturday morning, and that was all the way down to the car park. It was fantastic. It was full of children just going wild, filling up their pockets of Easter eggs, and this lucky boy's walked away with this. It's a giant egg. It's about 3.5 kilos of chocolate sort of thing.
How many thousands of dollars of chocolate would that have been?
We hit about 6 kilos of eggs out there as well. So in that aspect, we're saying this is about fun as well. This is about smiles on faces, and it's about just enjoying chocolate for what it is. And I think there are some times where you just have to say, yep, just put your hands in chocolate. Just enjoy the fact that this is just such an amazing product. So yeah, go for it.
So look, I had planned that question before I learned about the fight, the dance, the battle you have with it in the kitchen.
Yep.
And so I get that.
Yep.
But I'm relieved to hear that you can still let your hair down and
You have to. And I think that's the thing, for an Easter period, I've spent those 3 weeks just doing that. And now that, the last few days, it's just about having fun with chocolate. We've got all the product. Now it's about, we're giving away little chickens, and we've got Easter bilbies here and rabbits and eggs. And it's just about sharing that now. And now we've got of course, bilbies that didn't quite turn out. They lost an ear, they broke a leg along the way. they're getting given out now to our customers as well. It's all about sharing that joy of chocolate as well.
Yeah. Because even I've got little girls, 6 and 8, they always say on a Tuesday night, "Where are you going, Dad?" Podcast, "What are you doing?" "I'm going to a chocolate shop." You should hear their ears just prick up.
Yeah.
It just cuts through to that. There's something about it being so central to childhood.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was wondering if you had like a chocolate tour for the winners of the hunt, and some of the kids were never seen again.
Yeah.
Are you making allusions?
Well, chocolatiers
to the Oompa Loompas.
Well, chocolatiers do have this reputation.
Yes. What did you think of Willy Wonka's chocolate factory?
I mean, I remember it from my childhood. I don't remember which particular edition it is now, because I think there's been a few.
If it'd be your child, it's probably the Gene Wilder one, I would have thought.
I'd say so, yeah. And it's fantastic. Like, I love that movie. It was great to watch. And it definitely sparks that bit of mystery around it as well. And, you could win this golden ticket to, the best experience you could ever have, and, be in a chocolate factory. And we have lots of customers and children run in here going, "Where's Marcus? Where's the chocolate maker? Where's the chocolate?" That sort of stuff. And it's fantastic.
You'd also see, as Willy Wonka saw, the different attitudes of some children and families. The selfish, the greedy, the happy, the generous. Yeah. Chocolate is probably a lens that focuses all of that.
It is true. And I guess the best lens or time to look at that is during the Easter egg hunt that was just held over the weekend. And you see the variety of children coming out there. And we're talking about some 25-year-olds out there too.
Wow. And that's pushing it.
There is, exactly.
Nothing like tackling a 5-year-old to steal the egg from their hand.
That's it. And, and you see the different attitudes come out. And most of these people are regular customers, so you see, how they are now going to interact. And the boy that found that really massive egg, he then went around and handed out all of his small eggs to all the other children. Like, how generous and how nice is that? And that's a great spirit to see in a young fellow already. But then there are other ones that will be out there, before the times, we start at 9 o'clock, but they'll be out at, 10 to 9, getting a few eggs already.
Squirreling
so
around,
of course you're going to get that. But in the end, it's about saying, enjoy it for what it is.
The spirit of chocolate.
That's it.
Why do we need to have the chocolate available in so many different shapes? Like blocks and truffles and...
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think it's an interesting one as well. I think people enjoy chocolate in many different ways. People like it plain, people like it with flavors, people like it to have soft centers and have, intense centers as well. Essentially, if our truffle range sells really well, and it's something that I really enjoy to make as well, and you can do so much with them, and you can incorporate different flavors. I think it's part of that, pastry and chef background where you want to, combine, and it's a bit of alchemy really there, where you're testing things out, you're trying out new things, and you're making complex flavors. Whereas your bars will be more, you can let the cacao itself speak. You can say, okay, let this chocolate now really pronounce itself, this origin, this, way of making the chocolate come out a little bit more as well. So it gives you a bit of a variety of aspects.
So I've got to confess, I'm probably more of a chocolate justice warrior who wants the cacao to be, I'd be happy for the rest of my life to eat beautiful quality chocolate and get that pure, dark joy. Why should I push myself? Why should I have that? We tried one of your cinnamon ones last year. I think it was, blew us away. I mean, I suppose I just answered my question, didn't I?
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. I think for me, the little chocolates, the truffles and ganaches, they're something you'll have one or two after dinner and just be like, that's enough. And I think that's something that we try and look at with our range, is to make sure those flavors are pronounced enough to say, this is now a passion fruit truffle. This is now salted caramel. So you know it, and you can be satisfied with that. Whereas, your bars is something that you can enjoy with a glass of wine, or, enjoy that with something else at the same time, and get the real flavors of the cacao coming through as well.
And what do you find works best? What crafts the best alchemy with chocolate? Is it nuts? Is it spices? Is it fruits? Is it creams? Is there something that you just know will always work, whereas other things will be totally risky?
Yeah, to be honest, I really enjoy nuts with chocolates. It's something that you can combine really easily as well. And I think the nut range is quite a large range, because you can go from quite full flavors to creamy flavors within nuts, and that can then match up really nicely, and you'll get nutty characters through cacao as well, quite a lot. So it's really easy to sort of match those things together. It's good then to balance it with something else. Then you could look at having a nut and a fruit topping sort of together, or having a more intense fruit base and then some nuts along the top of it as well. So a bit of balance there. Yeah.
Yes, because the thing that I find, is even when I come here, I see so many options, and I don't want to. I've got one chance to have that virginal experience in my mouth, and you think, what do I do? Do I swing the? I haven't actually tried jelly, but you swing that way, or do I try something different? And then it's a dilemma. It's a first world problem. I admit it is, isn't it? Whereas your answer is buy a few, but don't eat them all at once.
Correct. That's right.
Okay.
That's why we offer you that little tasting on the side of your hot chocolate too.
Right.
So you get an idea what it's about.
Yes.
Decide if you like it.
Mm-hmm.
And then go and get some.
And do you find people often then go and get some?
Definitely. Yeah.
I love it. Tell me though, from your perspective, from a business perspective, you've set up this shop here. You've been doing the hard yards for the last 4 years or so. Supermarket shelves are craning. They're overloaded with all sorts of chocolate. Anything you want that's chocolate. Most shops have some sort of chocolate. How do you survive? Like, how do you know that there'll be people who will want to buy your chocolate when it's just so ubiquitous?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question as well. And it's something that I luckily enough was naive enough not to think about when opening up. Otherwise you wouldn't do it, would you? No, it's true. Chocolate's everywhere, and it's, very different price points. There's huge market leaders. There's a lot going on in the chocolate industry. There's even rumors of a chocolate shortage in the world as well. You know, we're heading towards a world without chocolate. So yeah, you have to be careful with those things. I think all we can do is carve a point of difference and really stand apart, from the rest and say, this is what we do and this is what we're doing well. And really highlight that. And it's coupled with, you know, the personal touch as well. Like it's not just about coming in here and buying a bar of chocolate. It's about, again, having that experience. It's about making sure that it's a pleasant experience as well, the retail experience, but also the cafe experience at the same time.
I think there's a few things that probably are heading in your direction in the world. One of them I've noticed in our family, we've gravitated away from buying fruit and veg from a supermarket to a fruit and veg shop.
Yeah.
Meat from a butcher. Yeah. I suppose you're asking us to take the leap to buy chocolate from a chocolatier, aren't you?
Yes, definitely. And I think you're seeing that as a natural trend within Australia and within society overall, which is a fascinating thing to see because we were this way a while ago and we then went all down that supermarket track and we became consumers just of these products. And now it's turning back the other way. So we're now getting, you know, individual little boutique shops reopening. You know, the butchers are coming back. The bakers are coming back. The artisan bakers, you know, the small batch breweries, the gin makers. It's, and Adelaide Hills where we are now, it's thriving with these little boutique, pop-up businesses and things. And that's really giving a lot of energy to what we do. And it's been supported by the locals, which is fantastic.
I think the other layer is the portion control. Many of us, some of us at this table have been suggested to them that they reduce their portion sizes. Yep. And I've certainly been doing that with, I'm drinking less than I used to.
Yep.
Nigel, shut up. But I am gradually on that pathway. And I think that's part of it why you can pay a bit more for the chocolate because you are just going to have a morsel or two, or to be fair, a morsel or four. But even so, that's a lot less than it used to be.
Exactly. And I think that's what a lot of people are doing. Is what I personally do as well. I'll eat a smaller amount of higher quality that would satisfy me than sitting down and enjoying a whole bar of chocolate. So yeah, we have a lot of people that do that. I'll come in every day for a single chocolate and that will be all they'll have for the whole day. And that's great.
Yeah, because that's habit addiction. Because that's a beautiful thing. But seriously, just come back. You made a throwaway comment about running out of chocolate. Are we seriously facing Chocolageddon?
The rumours are getting stronger, and I think we all have to consider it. I'm not really sure how or why, but it's definitely on the cards. And I think it's the cacao plantations themselves are, if the world starts to eat more and more chocolate, which it is. and there are more and more cultures beginning to eat chocolate, it can become a reality that where there's a shortage. It doesn't mean it's going to stop. It just means that everything overall becomes more expensive. As something becomes shorter, it becomes more expensive, which again can affect different companies. The chocolate industry is kind of monopolized as well. There are a few big companies out there that, run 80% of, the production. So
like your Nestle's and your Cadbury's and those
exactly
types.
Those sort of, companies. And
Do they have control over the plantations as well?
yeah, often they own the plantations as well. So it can be very difficult for smaller producers or, smaller operators to sort of get their way into the market.
It's like a De Beers sort of setup.
Yeah,
The
correct.
diamonds,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's a difficult industry, but it also gives us an opportunity as a small producer to choose our way within that as well, and to carve a new path. And the good thing is that we're not alone. There are other chocolatiers now in Adelaide, in Australia, in South Australia, in the world that are doing this as well. So it helps give us a bit of a voice, I guess.
Would you form a buying group?
Yes, yeah, definitely. We don't yet have one, but that will definitely be a consideration for me. Yeah.
And then would you be able to match up with like a smaller supplier of the actual cocoa overseas, so you could actually sort of cut out the large monopoly people as well, sort of go cooperative to cooperative and
Yep. And as soon as I have a bit of time away from here, it's my plan. Exactly.
Oh, right, okay.
Try and build those next level of relationships. But unfortunately, this is taking up 24 hours a day at the moment. But at one point we'll ease and hopefully I can look at the next layer.
Have you asked Stirling Council whether you could turn that little bit of lawn out the front of you into a plantation?
Not as yet, but that's not a bad suggestion.
Yes. We could accidentally drop some seeds there before we leave.
Yeah.
Marcus, what is your secret chocolate indulgence? What is your something you've never shared with anyone else that you do with chocolate? That you want to share publicly? I should hasten to add, this is being recorded.
Yeah. Look, I'm not sure if I should say, but I do enjoy Tim Tam every now and again.
Right. Okay.
Is that allowed?
Well,
yeah. Is it the mix? Is it the texture, like the mix of crunch and smooth, or the flavour, or what there?
Yeah. I think it's still your childhood memory that, and I think that gets everyone every time in the end. Like it's when you buy into one, you're like, it brings back those memories, and that's something I don't know if you could ever change that.
And it is the compounded chocolate too. So it's
not good.
It's you on the wild side, isn't it?
Exactly. And I always feel really bad when I open a packet and I get into that first one, but it's something that you do, and that's your secret, guilty pleasure.
They're amazingly consistent though.
They are.
Yeah. They're like incredibly the same.
Yeah.
But it is like, we've talked to a lot of winemakers. A lot of them will chug away on just beer.
On a beer.
And that's probably your equivalent to slumming it.
It is funny as well. And then when I get home, I'll often just open up a jar of olives and just eat those. I think you crave then salty things as well. So after you've been around sweets all day and you are eating it, you are tasting it all day long, and I'll just, pickles, strong cheeses, olives, that sort of stuff.
Yes.
Wow. You're not pregnant, are you?
With root cheese as well. Yeah.
Yes, it is sounding like that.
Yeah.
Now, we've got some questions from listeners that I need to put you through. All right. First one is from Sasha Sachs. She's one half of Hannaford and Sachs, which is a very famous restaurant on Kangaroo Island under a huge fig tree. I've eaten it. It's fantastic food.
Yep.
Anyway, she's asked, how can I get a year's supply of chocolate? Now, and I left that one in. She's got another question in a moment.
Yeah.
But do you find everyone always wants samples from you, and how do you cope?
Well, firstly, if she's able to grow figs, she might be able to grow a cacao tree right next to it.
Oh, wow.
Then she might be able to have a year's supply of chocolate right there.
Yes.
That could work. To the other bit, yes, we get asked a lot for chocolate. And it was something that when we first opened, like within the first couple of weeks, I gave away 25 hampers of chocolate and stuff. And I very quickly realized this was not viable. That we're actually going to have to be a business as well here. Mm-hmm. We can't be just super generous. And we get emails and phone calls and requests all the time. I think everyone wants to include chocolate in their fundraiser, in their event. And we've had to now become a bit diplomatic about it. And sort of, we look at our community and we say, within our community, we'll support and we'll give something at least. But it's, that there has to be a bit of a boundary as to how much chocolate is it.
Because I'm sure people just think, oh, it's just another thing. They don't understand that the torture that you go through to produce it. Maybe I've just worked out what your new threshold is. Tell them they need to listen to episode 191 of the Adelaide Show in entirety. We'll give you some questions you can ask them.
Big quiz afterwards.
Yes. And then if they can answer that, then you can talk to them. We have just solved your problem.
That'd be excellent.
And that will only cost us. So that was her first question. But the serious one was, why do we make coffee chocolate? Surely nobody likes it. She's not a fan.
Okay.
What do you think? And in fact, there was a big movement. I saw lots of social media of people breaking open chocolate eggs and pouring coffee into the cup. What's your take on it? Do you disagree with Sasha?
I think it's one of those things that it's personal preference, definitely, and it's your palate. As to what you like. I did see that social media movement as well with the eggs, and we had, I think, 3 of our staff members post it through our internal Facebook group as well, wanting us to do that as well, and we probably will next year. You never know, but it's just one of those things. We do have a coffee ganache that sits on our counter. We do have a bar of chocolate that has coffee through it as well. I think I personally don't find it adverse. I think it matches up quite nicely. We enjoy it. And I think it again comes down to your personal preference as well. They are both strong flavors. So that you can find in the end that they'll hit each other quite hard. So you've got to get that balance right as well. So otherwise your coffee's going to take over your cacao, or your cacao's going to take over your coffee. And you can end up with a bit of a mess in your palate as well.
It's fact, because I love coffee and I love chocolate, and I've always hated the two together. And yet when we were at Kyton's Bakery about 100 weeks ago, they had their coffee lamingtons out. And I think they've got it right, because it's such a tiny hint of coffee. It actually makes the chocolate taste more chocolatey.
And that's it. You really need to have one of your flavor profiles coming up and the other supporting. If you're going to have the two hitting each other, then you have issues with your palate.
They start fighting one another.
Exactly. And that's not pleasant. But it's really, but that can be with any product. Like if you put too many berries on a chocolate, it's also going to have the same problem. It gets too sour or too acidic, or, you've got to be really careful with your balancing as well.
Next question is from Joe from Ballycroft Wines, Ballycroft Vineyards in Greenock. He actually made the suggestion we should have brought the Ballycroft Fortified Vintage Mataro up, which we've had before on this program. He said, which we know goes perfectly with chocolate. It made me wonder, what wine varieties or drinks go best with chocolate? And you might know some of this because you run a dessert bar here is it Friday and Saturday night?
Friday and Saturdays, correct.
Which has won awards. So in answering this question, tell us about how you run your dessert nights too, because I imagine, is there alcohol involved?
Not yet, unfortunately.
Not yet.
Fascinating enough. And it's interesting. We had once a review written by a prominent writer back in the Adelaide Hills magazine days.
Yes.
And he mentioned as well, it was fascinating to see the place full and vibrant and absolutely pumping with no alcohol. And that's a really fascinating thing. That's what chocolate can do.
That is. You're weaving magic.
Exactly.
But for a good cause.
For a good cause, So as of yet, not yet. But we are looking to do that for that reason as well, to give that next layer and that next depth. And there are so many producers in the hills, but also in South Australia that produce fantastic wine. So why not look at matching up a few together? Red wine goes really nicely together. Whites can be a little bit more difficult because of some of its sourness and acidicness can be too harsh, clash too much. We find sparklings work really nicely with some of the white chocolates and the lighter chocolates as well. And of course, fortifieds or stickies, they're just fantastic as well. Like you can really get some beautiful ports and things like that as well.
So what are you doing on these dessert nights? Give us an example of what a dish you might serve up to us.
Yeah, at our current menu, we've got this beautiful chocolate mousse. So it's a 64% dark chocolate, so it's getting quite rich with some caramelized cacao nibs through the chocolate mousse. And then we've got arrangement of different sorts of nuts. So we're looking at, again, stronger flavors. So with the hazelnut, we've got some creamier macadamias on there as well, and a few different herbs. So we've actually got some thyme, some chocolate mint, some oregano. So it's a little bit of different flavors that are really going to punch out and jump out of the plate. Mandarin ice cream on that one as well, and then some dehydrated chocolate mousse with some flowers as well. So this is something that we're serving up currently.
And now I've got to ask about this because I get nervous when I hear about the way you're handling your nuts because hazelnuts, they sounded great, but thyme?
Yep.
Wouldn't that just blow everything out off the plate?
And that's what the whole idea is. So you're going to get a nice small sprig of this, and then you're going to get a sprig of this chocolate mint, and a sprig of something else, and then a little bit of this, and it's all on this bed of this dark chocolate mousse. So it's balancing it out just
So this is
perfectly.
dipped. So this is thyme dipped in chocolate. Is it?
No, it actually just it's fresh across the top.
Oh, just a piece of thyme.
Piece of thyme.
Oh, okay.
And so the idea is you put that in your mouth with
And it's
dark...
Correct. And so you're going to get that real punch. Wow, there's the thyme. And then that chocolate mousse, being such a dark mousse, is going to balance it out. Then the next spoonful, here's a hazelnut. And then the next one is a bit of mandarin. So it's this plate. It's like we're calling it a garden, essentially, of different flavors.
I would love to watch video of someone's face as they work their way through that dish.
Yep. And that's exactly what it's meant to be. Again, it's you work your way through it. So it's every spoonful is something different. And that's about taking, again, someone on a journey. It's not about getting a plate full of a sugary, chocolatey mess. It's about this is something that's fine. And that's, I guess, where those awards come from.
Okay. We'll have to come back. So Friday and Saturday nights.
Correct. Yeah. Every Friday and Saturday night from 6 p.m.
Yep.
We're open till about 10, roughly.
Okay.
Just depending on how the night goes.
Beautiful. Now, last couple of questions from our listeners. Andrew Reimer on 5AA. He just asked, can man and or woman live on chocolate alone? How many days could you go living on chocolate and just chocolate, do you think? I'm going to take your silly question and make it a serious one. Have you ever tried it? Have you ever done a chocolate fast? Like with the reverse of
I've pretty much been doing it for the last 10 years. Oh. So, and I'm still here. So I guess the answer is yes, you can. I don't have any scientific degrees or background. I wouldn't know if you could, but essentially it's a fruit. Essentially it's healthy for you.
It's from a seed as well.
Yeah.
That you'd expect to have
a
bit of everything in it.
Exactly.
There should be proteins and carbohydrate and fat in it.
Yeah.
So I'm loving this.
Exactly. So
there's definitely carbohydrate. There's definitely fat. And presumably there's a good percentage of probably proteins in it as well, because nuts always have pretty high protein.
Antioxidants. It's going to keep you up healthy. It's one of the highest, I think, in the world. It is a fruit, essentially. And I guess if you're eating dark chocolate, you'll be all right. So for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and I have been known to only eat chocolate within a 2-day period.
Wow. And you are very well proportioned, right? Very lean. Do you do a lot of exercise as well, or?
I think it's just the stress.
Just the stress.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Of running your business. So.
Well, Andrew, thank you for that question. And Marcus, thank you for that answer. Last questions go to Janice Littleton, a local here in Stirling. Did you enjoy, Marcus, teaching at Sticky Rice? And will you be doing more classes there teaching the magic of chocolate making?
Yes.
And what is Sticky Rice?
Yeah, so Sticky Rice is a cooking school close to us here. So it's just probably about 2 kilometres away from here. So it's essentially still Stirling. So they approached us with regards to doing these collaboration together. So we've been asked many, many times to do classes, and we're just too small. We can't fit 20 people in our kitchen to do a chocolate class. So I thought, well, this is a great matchup. It's a good chance to offer something. Was a huge success. It was absolutely fantastic. Really enjoyed it. We did dessert bar classes, and we did chocolate making classes, and it was just fantastic. I was very nervous about it, trying to have 9 groups of people tempering chocolate at the same time. It was difficult.
So do people actually go home and then make their own chocolate from?
I hope they do.
That's the plan. That's the plan, is that you actually can go home and with the cocoa powder and the
and the different toppings, the actual the chocolatier,
recreate it
and go for it. And we gave out the recipes for desserts and the whole thing. It was just an amazing event. And everyone molded out some bars, and we dipped chocolates as well. So it was great fun. And, yes, we'll do it again. And that's, I think in May is the first set. So coming up, contact Sticky Rice directly.
Yep.
And they'll be able to sort you out with the information.
Fantastic. Another question from Janice. I know Marcus does some amazing raw desserts, but has he tried raw chocolate? Is it me, or is it just not as flexible in use as tempered chocolate?
What's raw chocolate?
Yeah, so raw, essentially, any food group that's considered raw, it just hasn't been, I think it's 40 degrees. It can't go above. So in the conching process, we'll raise chocolate above 40 degrees. And yes, there's a movement towards raw chocolates as well. And we've got raw cacao powder and the nibs and things like that where it hasn't had that process done to it yet. It is a lot more difficult to work with. And it's a lot of people use different fats in it as well. So there'll be different sorts of substitutes and different sugars. And
so just go through what is a conching process again?
That's where it gets basically mixed over that 72-hour period, making it really fine as well. But there's a heat involved in that also. And it takes out a lot of the sourness and the bitterness from the bean.
Oh, okay.
That's where the temperature comes from. And roasting will often go above that temperature too. Yep. Raw chocolates, it's a difficult thing to work with, and a lot of people will be doing this at home as well, making raw chocolate. It's great fun, to play around with, but it's I guess even more temperamental than your actual covages as well. So it can be quite a nightmare to be playing around with.
Wow. I'm glad you asked, Janice. No, I just feel stressed. I'm taking some stress off you. The final one. For the hippie ethical foodism brigade, she says, is all Marcus's cacao sourced from ethical, fairly traded, child slave-free cacao farms? And she said this question was all the rage over Easter in some of the foodism groups, so she just decided to jump on the bandwagon. Yep.
And a very, very good question, and I'm happy that you've asked it as well, because it's something that I personally really believe in and really strongly. It's my upbringing. It's what we as a family have always strived towards. Chocolate and coffee are probably two of the most ethically, I don't know how you say it, devastating products in the world. Clothing and shoes, I guess, the same. But we've now got on my shoulders, I feel, a responsibility that I can make a difference within this now. We're still unfortunately very small, which means that my choices and my options are very limited. So at this stage, it's not. It's coverture. It's multiple regions. It's not completely fair trade or organic.
So you can't sort of trace it back to the plantation yet?
No, and that's something that we want to work on. So that's the next step, and that's where I see in the next, it's probably honestly another 5-year plan sort of thing. But that's that traceability. That's that ethical route that we as a company want to take. It's just still a long process as well, but it's definitely the goal. Well.
Is part of that problem there the fact that there's sort of this monopoly over controlling the supply and things? Because there's also in their interest if they don't want to make it look bad in any way at all. So it's better we don't know where it came from, so we can't say whether it's good or bad.
Correct, yeah. And there's a lot of mystery and sort of, dodginess that goes on around these things as well. So even some of those certifications and those things, it's not always the truth as well. So you've got to be really careful with that. So I think for me, there's going to be a lot of groundwork and footwork actually in these locations, building it directly with those relationships as well. And that's going to take a lot of time as well. So we're working towards it, but it's still going to be a little way off.
All right. Marcus, thank you so much for opening your doors for us tonight and for taking us through this chocolate journey. Just as you're probably thinking, phew, I can relax, I just ask you to prepare, because Nigel's getting ready to subject you to Is It News, some historical South Australian quiz questions. Are you ready?
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic.
Is It News?
And that brings us to Is It News? Theme this week is chocolate. We hadn't come across a chocolate theme before, I don't think.
Never. This is a first, Marcus.
This is the first in our food series of podcasts for chocolate. So we'll jump straight into the advertiser, March 1919. Demand for Easter eggs. With Easter Saturday still some days away, a strong demand for chocolate Easter eggs, particularly the lower priced ones, has already been noticed by confectioners. Most shops are displaying a wide variety of chocolate eggs, varying in price from 3 pennies to £1. However, some suburban stores have reported that they have already sold out of the 3 penny lines. Most city stores are offering eggs from 4 pennies each. March 1919, The Advertiser.
And there was a demand for cheaper eggs.
Demand for Easter eggs. The general demand is a strong demand for Easter eggs in 1919.
So it would have been the year after the end of the First World War.
Yep.
So we would have been through just surviving.
Yep.
And then a little bit of joy.
So they need they need cheaper ones.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, and they're already sold out. This is Easter Saturday, so it's the day before the giving.
Mm-hmm.
To be sold out, it can be.
Yep, that sounds
Should be.
plausible.
Yep. Some days away.
Yep.
And I imagine they would have had even smaller production quantities.
Would have
then.
thought so. Yeah.
Because it would have been like what you're doing now, but more primitive.
Correct. I think it's plausible.
Yeah. So far, I'm with you. I think it's plausible too.
Yeah.
Second story. The News, July 1935. Eating contest ends with 30-second chocolate frog. Victoria may have its university duels and wheelbarrow marathons, America her pole sitters and England her channel swimmers, but only South Australia could produce the world champion frog eater. The great frog eating endurance test was held in the refectory at the Adelaide University yesterday. It was watched by only a moderate crowd of university students, and its progress was not cabled all over the world. The frogs were chocolate ones, and were bought in the half dozens. Different varieties were bought each time, so the monotony of the fare would not discourage the eater. The contest arose because a 20-year-old medical student, J.J. Rice, and a cadet in the physics department, Murray Keek, aged 15, had an argument about the number of frogs a normal healthy boy could eat at a given time. The freak wager fever having reached Adelaide, they soon arranged that Keek should try to eat 4 dozen frogs in 35 minutes for a wager of 1 shilling. If he gave in or took longer than 35 minutes, he had to provide his own frogs as well as the shilling. I will leave that story at that point.
Now, we're probably fairly safe to say chocolate frogs would have been about the same size throughout history.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
It is
It's
a
quite
standard small one, not the jumbo, yeah.
48 frogs.
It was a challenge in 35 minutes.
That's more than a frog a minute.
Yep.
Is that doable?
I think it's doable. Not sure if it's healthy or if you could keep it down. But it's a lot of frogs. Yeah. But, I don't know. It just doesn't sound quite right, does it?
It's a lot. And they're odd numbers too. 48 in 35 minutes.
Yeah. And what university was doing this?
It's Adelaide.
Adelaide University. Yeah. A science student?
It was a 20-year-old medical student.
Medical.
And a cadet in the physics department.
Yeah. I'm not buying this one.
You're suspicious at this point.
Yeah.
The thing is, they wouldn't be your proper type of chocolate either. It would have been oil-pumped chocolate as well.
Yeah, it would
that'd get really queasy.
It wouldn't have felt good afterwards.
No.
And different flavours.
Yeah,
every half dozen. Yeah. I mean, it would have been interesting.
The article goes on. I actually found quite a long, very detailed description of it. Peppermint frogs were involved at some point.
Yep.
Oh, God. No, sorry, I meant that. That's okay for one, but a whole volley of them.
Yeah.
What do you call a group of frogs?
It was only 6.
Is it a school? A school of frogs?
Pot of frogs sounds...
Chocolate frogs.
I don't know. The only thing that I should let Marcus know is sometimes these are totally made up. Yeah. Sometimes they happen somewhere else, and he's saying they happen in South Australia. All right. Last one.
Third one. The Register, October 1921. Chocolate pilfering. At a meeting of the Port Adelaide branch of the Amalgamated Society of Engineers, it was resolved that this branch, although not approving of the thefts committed by the female employees at the Walton Limited, recently strongly disapproves of the drastic manner these employees were dealt with in the police court, and the gross injustice meted out to them by bringing such girls before the police court and branding them publicly for their delinquencies. As they were dismissed when discovered pilfering, the loss of employment and consequent disgrace would be a sufficient punishment enough in most stances.
Pilfering from where?
From Walton Limited, which was a small chocolate company in Adelaide.
and the people deciding this was a group of engineers.
Well, they were complaining about the punishment the court had meted to them.
What was the punishment again?
Drastic manners these employees were dealt with by the police court, and the gross injustice meted out by bringing such girls before the police court and branding them publicly for their delinquencies.
What year?
1921.
I mean, those sort of punishments could happen.
Yeah.
But here's where my suspicions are high.
Yeah.
My suspicions are high because Nigel is an engineer. And that could be why he decided to craft a story about a society of engineers.
It's the amalgamated society of engineers.
Yeah, exactly. And I think meted out, these are quaint terms he's getting good at using to try and write archaic sounding stories.
Yep.
And what was the company name they were pilfered from?
Walton Limited.
Have you ever heard of Walton Limited?
I haven't, but it does sound legitimate, doesn't it? Yeah, it could.
That could happen. That could happen.
Yeah.
So,
but I'm still suspect of this one too.
Right. So one of them is fake.
Yeah. Okay.
So we both think that's true.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Or are we that consumerist in 1919? How long have Easter eggs been a thing?
Yeah, good point.
Has he snuck one in?
Yeah.
Is that too early?
No, surely it's been around before that.
I'm relying on you, Marcus.
Yeah, no, I'd say it's
Booth-Remmers.
Yeah, it will have been before that.
Are you sure?
Not sure.
Okay. I'm so glad I've got you on the show.
Yeah.
You are my hope. But
I'd say that one's true still.
Yeah, I suppose. And the only thing for me that sells it is the relief that the Great War's over and we're starting to get life back together again. Okay. Second one?
Second one was the contest eating the chocolate frogs.
Yeah.
Eating contest ends with 30-second chocolate frog.
What does that mean? 30 seconds?
I think he got to before he couldn't do any more.
That sounds legit.
Yeah, it does. Just the wording didn't sound quite right to me. It sounds as if it wasn't, I don't know, an article.
And the last one was...
Could be, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. I'm having a terrible year, so I'm going to make my decision after you've made yours, Marcus.
I'm going to say it's the second one.
Is the fake?
Yep.
And even though I think you're right...
Going to go for the first.
I think I'm going with the third one as the fake. And I'm probably going to regret this, and it'll be 10-3 instead of 4-9. But I think he's faked that story, or he's taken it from somewhere else. It does sound legitimate, though. But it's the amalgamated group of engineers.
It just doesn't.
That's the thing. That's rubbing my claw. Or whatever they're called. You know what engineers are like. Rowdy mob. Okay, that's where my money is. Hit us.
Okay, we'll go back in reverse order.
Oh, no.
For some sweet chocolate irony. So
it is the first one. Yeah.
Is indeed a true story.
Hate you.
Nasty women were indeed selling from Walton Limited. That leaves us between story number 2 and story number 1. I too was incredulous about story number 2 when I found the first little clip of it from an interstate newspaper. Further investigation found a massive article in detail that I won't go through here. Is indeed a true story, which means the first one is wrong. And Steve, you were so close.
Oh.
Because chocolate Easter eggs didn't exist in 1919. They've come since then.
There you go.
Oh.
There you
Marcus,
go. I know. That's so good.
You are carrying the responsibility for this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so I tried now. There could well have been them, but I found no reference in the 1910s or earlier of any chocolate Easter eggs.
Nigel, can you, in the interest of Easter, can you grant me a point?
No. No, I'm a hard judge. I'm a judge.
Thanks for playing, Marcus.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Cool, so close, Steve. And
that was well thought through. Yeah.
Your skepticism really came out of, wait a second, did it actually exist back then?
Yeah. And then it was Marcus who thought they must have.
I know.
The made-up bit was the year 1919, post-war by 1 year.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Nigel.
Anytime.
We have opened up the vault yet again, and 100 weeks ago, we have found a snippet from one half of Clarke and Dawe, Bryan Dawe. Remember Bryan Dawe joined us? Woodville High School was having its centenary, and he was the big speaker, and I'm a former Woodville High student. I wasn't asked, but I don't hold grudges. I've even forgotten it. Anyway, unfortunately, of course, Bryan was part of Clarke and Dawe. John Clarke died of a massive heart attack just a few days ago now, and there was a story covered by, I think it was the Sydney Morning Herald. In fact, I'll put a link to it in the show notes. Bryan Dawe just went away from the public for a few days. He was in such shock. John Clarke had a massive heart attack climbing up Mount Abrupt in the Grampians, and just the situation around that took him back 54 years to when he was at school at Woodville High School in year 10 to get the news that his dad had just died of a massive heart attack. Here's that snippet now.
My circumstances changed. My father died when I was 15. I was in third year. And it was a very strange thing that happened. The boy that I was sitting next to, directly next to, was a gorgeous man called Algis Greb, who was a Lithuanian. And Algie's father died on the same day mine did. So we both changed our lives in one go, because that gave us the sort of impetus to leave, because we were clearly not happy. And Algie went on to become a priest, and we were both got an audience and standing at a lectern. And in a unique situation, that when my mother died, Algie did the service for her, the funeral. But I was told, I mean, the key to my story with Woodville was the fabulously named career advisory officer. Oh, Jesus. When I went down with my mother to talk to this guy, and he said, "So what do you want to do, son?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to be a writer or an actor, but I'd really like to be a barrister or a lawyer." And he said, "Well, look, you can't be any of those things. You're from the wrong background. In other words, you're working class, you're stupid, you do things with your hands." So many times I have looked to the heavens and quoted Latin, "Sire brassus meus, eat my shorts." Especially when I was the keynote speaker at the South Australian Bar Association dinner about 3 years ago, and I got a standing ovation, and I just looked up and I went, "There, take that."
And now, with a musical pilgrimage for your listening pleasure, here's Dan Drummond.
Good evening, folks. Dan here with another episode of the Musical Pilgrimage for the Adelaide Show podcast, the special Easter edition. Hope you guys had a fantastic long weekend. Enjoyed the beautiful weather that Adelaide put on for us, and got away with your families and did the Easter thing. Unfortunately, I had to work for the 4 days, so I didn't get to enjoy the break as much as I possibly would have liked, but still got to spend some quality time with the family, the cousins and whatnot, and I hope you did the same. I hope you spent a bit of time over that weekend checking out our artist of last week, Ben McNeil, and his song Written in the Skies. Definitely go and see him live. He's a brilliant singer-songwriter. He also is a producer, mixer, masterer of all things musical, so check him out on the Facebook. While you're there, you can check out the links to our episode this week. The lads, Steve and Nigel, have organised an interview with local chocolatier Marcus from Red Cacao Chocolatiers. They're doing a bit of tasting and whatnot, and hopefully it doesn't mess with Steve's fitness program too much. But definitely check out the episode this week. Steve sent me a bit of a task this week with the song of the week, to find something that went with chocolate. I unfortunately failed miserably. So if any local artists out there would like to write a song about chocolate for me for next year's Easter edition, that'd be fantastic, and I'll love you greatly. So instead of sort of focusing on the chocolate, I thought about the Easter angle, and the egg hunt and everything that you do with the kids, and how it sort of takes you back to being a kid. I know I loved the Easter egg hunt on Easter Sunday when I was a kid, and I love it even more nowadays, watching my two boys and their cousins go around the backyard looking for eggs and the joy that they get out of it. And I thought, yeah, let's go with something like that. So I found a song from a local singer-songwriter, absolutely brilliant local singer-songwriter by the name of Ben Ford-Davies, and the song's called Still a Boy, and it's basically about his youth and him growing up. And if you listen to the lyrics, I think you'll sort of take yourself back to when you were younger. And he plays around a fair bit, Ben. Plays a lot with international artist Ronnie Tahini. I think he did some sort of mentorship with Ronnie. Everyone knows Ronnie Tahini. But yeah, definitely check out Ben Ford-Davies. He won the Scala songwriting competition a couple of years ago, or last year maybe. And this is his song, Still a Boy. I hope you enjoy. Cheers.
I had a friend and he had me, thick as thieves we'd ever be, riding around in a clapped-out van, a doobie in your pocket and a song in hand. Everything we tried it was all brand new, everything they told us not to do. If I was in trouble, then so were you. Just another tale to tell. Somewhere between being boys and men, certainty became questioning. It didn't feel right, but it couldn't be wrong when a girl came along. But she got you, and she got you good. Took out the ground from where you stood, picked you up, put you in your place. The car kicking up dust in my face, and you get smaller in the distance. Time, it beats upon my skin, shows me where I've been, shows me where I'm going. But I am clear in my mind, I am still a boy, time is left behind. Well, the rug came out and I fell through the rosy glass and the dream not true. If I got tall and you got old, then growing up has left me cold. I'm happy you found salvation. I never knew you needed some. I would have seen it on the wall if you hadn't written it so small. But there will always be a memory. Time come, beats upon my skin, show me where I've been, show me where I'm going. But I am clear in my mind, I am still a boy, time is left behind. Now we're older and wiser still, won't say it, I can't tell how friends can leave off after all this time. After everything that's happened, now you want me to deny the heart of where I came from. And I won't, and I can't, and I won't. It keeps me going on.
There it is, Ben Ford-Davies and Still a Boy. And that's the show for this week. Marcus Booth-Remmers, underneath your serious chocolatierness and your double-barrel surname, are you still a boy? Is there a boy that enjoys playing in the kitchen, or have you really turned into a really serious adult?
No, it's just a massive creative side, and I just, really enjoy that freedom that you can find within a kitchen, and that's what keeps me going.
And what does it feel like just looking around your shop and seeing what would be hundreds of chocolates that you've made? That must be... Because there's satisfaction when one of our episodes goes out for me.
Yeah.
You must have a massive satisfaction here.
Yeah, I guess I hardly sit in here and take it all in very often. No, it's true.
Have a look.
Yeah, no, it's really true. And it is a very proud thing for me to know this is here and it's working and it's real.
Yeah.
So eyeing off those chocolates there, can you look at any of them and think of the trauma they've caused you in particular?
Yeah, I think that's why I look away. Yeah.
Just pick one or two of them so that when someone comes into Red Cacao through the week and they look at your truffles, just give them a little story for one or two of them that is stained in your subconscious. There's got to be something there.
Yeah, I mean, the Shiraz truffle, that's this one here, right in the corner. The slightly sort of pink purple topped one. That's a nightmare every time. This colour we put it in as the chocolate's, just there, just at the right temperature, and that colour goes. It does. Yeah. And it's the process of doing that. We end up with a mess throughout the kitchen, and we have this shiny glitter on our eyebrows, across our face, in our hair, everywhere. And it's just every time we make this product, it's like a glittery sort of, it's just, it goes everywhere. And that's, every time I look at that truffle, I have to just turn away.
That's fantastic. Enjoy them when you come in this week. And one more with a story there.
Well, the salted caramel truffles, it's probably it is our biggest seller, and we do that now in milk and dark. To begin with, when I started here, I refused to make salted caramel because it was one of those trends, and we're like, we're not going to go down that path. We'll be different. But we had to succumb, and it's been great. I mean, you have to do those things. And
is that basically like people with pitchforks at the door?
Oh, it was, yeah. We would get questioned,
They do that in the hills too.
Yeah, they do. They go out, 3 times a day they'd be there.
You have Alexander Downer standing at the front door.
Yeah. So we had to do that, and now we sell so many of them. It's nearly you're doing that all the time. It seems to be all you're doing is just decorating these sort of caramel truffles and getting these lines right. So
every time you make them, you're reminded of how you gave up on your principles.
Correct. Yeah. And now I make batches of them, and you're like, wow. So they're probably the two. Yeah.
That is awesome. That's going to be just even more succulent to enjoy.
I know everyone's going to come in next week and order them. Every single one of them.
Exactly. And last thing, how do you tell people how to find you? Because you are hidden away.
We certainly
What's the
are.
biggest landmark near us?
Harndorf. No. I know. That's for anyone coming up from Adelaide. It's so Westpac Bank, which is not really a landmark. That's what's closest to us. Woodville Bakery for the locals that know where that is. But yeah, it's very difficult. You just sort of have to say, come out the first roundabout of Stirling, head over the slight rise, come down past the fruit and veg, and then you'll find these alleyways. And that's what Stirling has, is these little laneways that come off, which makes it very difficult for shops like ourselves that are down one of these alleyways to turn down one of those, find this large car park out the back, because it's great car parking if you can find it.
Yep.
And then we're just tucked in along that laneway. So we sort of say sandwiched between Westpac Bank and Woodville Bakery.
Okay, because I've got to say, for the record, it took me 3 times over successive visits to actually find you.
Yeah, I know. I still get lost. But if you get lost, we say just ask for the chocolate shop, and people will point you in the right direction, no matter where you are in Stirling.
That's a beautiful thing. Marcus, thanks again.
Thank you.
Nigel, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to our listeners.
And next week, we're moving from chocolate to the dark art of dating using Tinder, Grindr, all those sorts of apps. So that's where we're heading next week, from the indulgent to the taboo. Until next week, is good night from me to Steve Davis. Good night, Don. Hi, it's Marcus Chocolatier from Red Cacao here, and I hope while you're listening to the Adelaide show, you're enjoying, or there's a truffle melting in your mouth, or just something chocolate.
Could you say, with this episode of the Adelaide show, I suggest the raspberry dark chocolate bar to complement.
Yes. And it doesn't have to be the same decision, okay? All right?
Is that a competition?
And a little bit of competition is fantastic.
The Adelaide Show podcast is produced by Steve Davis and Nigel Dobson-Keefe. Nigel is a scientist by day and an artist by night. Steve is my daddy and a marketer by day. You can contact him at bakermarketingservices.com. This has been Alexandra Davis, and for the record, my daddy is nearly always late, but he's getting better at it. And my name is Caitlin Davis, and I agree with everything my sister said. But I have one more thing to say. If you have enjoyed this show, would you please tell a friend about it? Because the more people who listen, the happier my daddy is. And if you really liked it, you could leave a review on iTunes. Thanks for listening!